Welcome to the Brothers Dim. This week we're talking about the wildly anticipated film Dune.
But first, let's do a quick kind of reflection on just the movie-going experience. I mean, I haven't gone to the movies in a while, and, things have been shut down, obviously, because of COVID.
I don't even know the last movie I went to. It might have been Joker.
And it's changed in the sense that you don't have to go to the theater to see the movie you want to see anymore, because with all the streaming platforms, they usually kind of co-launch on HBO Go or Amazon or Netflix. They're all movie studios now.
Like the HBO thing started because of COVID, right? Because no one's going to the movie theater.
But I think that's just the norm now. And I kind of hope it doesn't stay like that, because I like to go to the theater, and that's kind of the only option, unless you pirate the movie, which I don't really do that. But it looks like that's where we're at. I think they launch them side by side, or at least Netflix, I think, was doing it even pre-COVID. They make one a week, was what I heard. And if it's good, then it goes into the theaters.
Well, I saw Roma in the theaters. That was a Netflix film, and it was really good. But Dune feels like the kind of movie that you need to see in a movie theater.
Yes.
Hopefully on IMAX.
I went and saw it on Dolby Digital IMAX. The seat was like shaking. The audio was insane with Hans Zimmer's soundtrack. And it reminded me, the last real movie-going experience that I loved, and it felt like a roller coaster ride, was Mad Max. I saw it in the theaters. I felt like I sat down. I was in like a roller coaster, one of those interactive rides, and you just fucking go. There's not a ton of plot. You're just fucking going through the scenes. It's all action. At the end, I feel like I was on a ride. This one, Dune, felt similar to that. I felt like I was on a ride. But if, let's say, Mad Max was a roller coaster, Dune kind of felt like a log ride. It wasn't as action-packed, but I still felt like I was going along on the ride. It was very, cinematic. There was long shots and them, sweeping through the sand, and when the ships come in, they took their time with, those kind of landscape type of shots. So it felt like a ride.
So I watched it on a television, and I think for that reason, we're going to have very different opinions of the movie, because the grandness sort of worked on me, and I'm wearing headphones and I'm trying to get into it, but it's definitely not the same as being in an IMAX theater.
Dang. No, this was one of the ones that should be IMAX or theater at least. When they're waiting for the worm, it's jarring how the sound just vibrates into your core. It was it definitely added a huge element to it. It was exciting to be back. There was Dune, and then I'm watching the trailers, and I just haven't really been gung-ho about movies or what's coming out, where there's just so much news and so much shit going on. There's nothing to commiserate with or talk to my friends with. It's just there's so much shit going on. But there was the trailer to The Matrix. There's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie coming out. There's Wes Anderson movies out now. I think I might go back to the movies tonight just because it felt good.
I really miss that feeling. I'm so nostalgic for when I was younger, and going to the movies, even shitty movies, was such an exciting experience. I'm sure I saw hundreds of shitty movies in the movie theater, but still enjoyed it. And I do not get that in my adult life, or it's very, very rare where I'm sitting there and I'm really, really pulled in, the roller coaster that you talk about. That's rare these days.
I think try the Dolby IMAX, because I don't know if I love the movie too much, but just sitting there and reclining, it was kind of like a calming experience. It's such a slow movie. It's very grandiose, a lot of huge landscapes and everything like that. And I kind of liked that slow pacing in the movie. It was not like that roller coaster Mad Max, or kind of any movie with a ton of plot and a ton of action scenes. It was just kind of a relaxing experience. Similar to, I've been watching Cowboy Bebop. I have to be in a calm state to watch these shows, because they're just slower. They're more, I don't know how to describe it, but they're calming. Yeah, that added to it as well. I just felt relaxed and I was like, all right, I don't really care how good it is, even though I did like Dune, but I was just enjoying the experience. You know, there was enough for me just to enjoy whatever happened.
Yeah, in general, I thought it was good. Like how grand it was, the scale of things worked. Like you would see people in comparison to like huge buildings or the worms or just huge things going on. And it really feels real. Like the special effects are so good that you feel like you're actually seeing something incredible. Like that part worked. The calmness that you're talking about, I guess it just didn't work for me. Like when you compare this to Cowboy Bebop, I remember just being much more emotional with Cowboy Bebop, right? Like it would have this ups and downs, and I'd really be pulled into the characters more than like the plot. And for me, it didn't happen. I wonder if that's because it was on TV or if I just don't get Timothée Chalamet or whoever. Emotionally, were you pulled in by the characters?
The kid specifically, he grew on me because even in the trailers or just seeing him, I was like, this kid just kind of looks like an apathetic kind of kid that would just stay home and be on Reddit a lot.
He's not even a kid. He's 25. He's the same age as Kyle MacLachlan was when he played Paul Atreides in the David Lynch movie. But Kyle MacLachlan looks like an adult, and then this guy looks like a child.
I thought he was supposed to be like, 17, 18 or something. Like he's supposed to be young, maybe even 16. But he grew on me. I liked his performance. I think it's part of the theme of the film too, is he wasn't just a highly emotional, angsty teen. He started to represent like a calmness, and he was pretty non-reactive in these intense situations. I think he had the perfect amount of rebellious nature. Like he was kind of being guided by all these people. You know, Josh Brolin is teaching him how to fight, and his dad is, you know, teaching him if he wants to be a leader, and his mom is also plotting and scheming, and she knows that he's some other weird like prophecy kid. So he's got a lot going for him, but I don't feel like he was just a passive member in it. Like he had enough rebelliousness where he kind of accepted it and wasn't just super emotional and reactionary like most kids are in these movies. But I think he had a good balance there where he seemed like more mature. Like he genuinely seemed like he was becoming a good leader, and the people around him were like respecting him and all that. So he grew on me, and he didn't really do much, or like he didn't really overdo it.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you have not read the book.
No, I know nothing.
I mean, I saw the first movie a million years ago, but I have not read the book either, and so I don't know what the future of this is, and we're only getting the first half of the book.
Is there just two? It said part one.
I think this is part one, and then part two is the second half of the first book. And potentially there's more because there's several books after that. So you're sort of talking about the way, like, I think he is supposed to represent a person in a certain state of childhood, right? Like they have not fully become an adult. And he's not overly emotional. He gets his emotion later, like, right? Like he's sort of closed in. Like there's nothing that excites him. He doesn't want to be doing this. He just feels like one of these rich kids who doesn't have a life because everything's been given to them, and like his father is awesome and he lays everything out and everything's going well, so there's nothing really for Paul to do. And so emotionally there's no need for him to mature, right? So he's just kind of like closed in. He's still in childhood, and as things rev up, oh, by the way, spoilers for everything, like this is what we always do. This first part is about the collapse of the family. And so he's going through everyone, all of his mentors and his father figures and his father and everyone dying. And now he has to grow up and become the man. And we barely get it, which is, for me, it's a bummer to break this into two movies because it just feels so incomplete, right? Like we're just starting his journey and we might not even get the second movie. I think this movie has made money, and so maybe they're going to do it. The director wants to do it, but it might not. And if it doesn't happen, it just sucks because this feels incomplete. You need that second movie for these things to pay off.
Like there's definitely enough to explore in the themes of this first movie, but it was definitely slow paced, and they're usually I'm the opposite where they shove so much, especially if it comes from a book, into a movie that I'm like, slow down too much. But this one I feel like was maybe the other version. It was not a lot of information. There was not a lot of plot. It kind of felt like I just rewatched the first original Star Wars. There is no plot. There's 10 minutes of plot in that movie, and it's not even that good. Every line that you hear people quote, like, these are not the droids you're looking for, and all that shit, that's like the only lines in the movie. There's not a lot going on from when I rewatched it. And this seems similar, but what they did in Star Wars, it was kind of the first huge grandiose sci-fi movie. So there was like 10-minute scenes of them getting into the spaceships and putting on their helmets and cool and like epic landscapes. So there was a lot more going on in it. It just didn't have a ton of plot. It wasn't really, that plot heavy.
I do love those movies where there's not a ton of plot. Like, I prefer less plot and just more character development and strange moments. I think there's a lot of people that don't like the first Dune movie that David Lynch did, but I think I prefer it because there is way more strangeness and surrealism happening, right? I think a part of this book, it's sort of a psychedelic journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted to get weirded out more. I wanted more weirdness here and less plot. And I feel like there was a lot of plot. There's a lot of like info dumps, which I think is the same in the book, but people like it in the book, where they just spend pages just explaining a concept, And this is totally a personal preference, and not everyone is like this. But I want to start as simple as possible and basically just follow one character and learn things as they learn them. And it's okay if I don't understand everything. There might be a lot of shit happening in the background, and it doesn't need to be explained to me. I'm totally cool with it, especially if the character doesn't understand what's going on. I don't need to understand.
Yeah.
Right? I'm along for the emotional journey more than understanding actually the reality of what's going on. I wish I was just in Paul's shoes and we weren't spending time explaining other things that were going on.
I'm more like that too. I'd rather connect emotionally, because there were times in Dune, or I guess in any movie, where it's like, just like you said, it dumps it on you. And this, like, the Emperor is going to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, fuck, I got to pocket that in my head so that I know what's happening. And I did notice myself doing that a couple times. Like, all right, I better remember that, because it's probably going to make the movie make sense. And I don't want to think much at all or have to remember anything. I'd rather just, like you said, be invested emotionally. So even if I miss some stuff, I'm getting the emotional journey, the character development, the theme, without having to think, oh yeah, which colony came here to do what, and whose side is that person on? I prefer the simple version of that stuff as well.
It was like the really, really slow moments, the really small moments that were the most powerful, where not a lot of stuff was happening, and you're just in a room for 5 minutes with some small event, right? Like when he has to do the test with his hand in the box. I love like those little moments. I don't need to see the war and like the bigger picture. I prefer if we keep it small.
Yeah. What's in the box? Pain.
I thought that was a really cool test. We're just going to do something that's incredibly painful, and you're not allowed to use your human instinct, right? Your instinct is to pull your hand out. Can you overpower your instinct?
That was like the core of it for me. Like, that's what we talk about mainly in like emotional response. Like, can you fight your emotional urge to just do this thing and hurt yourself? And can you respond differently, the way that you think will be better, which he basically does. And I don't know why he scares her. Like, he puts his hand in the box and he fights it and it hurts. And then towards the end, he just stares at her. And then she kind of freaks out. Do you remember that? And she's like, okay, let's stop. Like, she thinks she got like scared of him.
Oh, no, I think you're right. There was something going on where it seemed like he was handling it better than she expected, right? I think he was angry, and he's actually so able to, be non-reactive, right? And I think she sees that he is as dangerous as she was hoping he wouldn't be.
She thought he'd be groveling in pain and barely make it through. And then she'd be like, okay, fine. I guess I don't kill you. And he was just like, took it for a second and then just stared at her, was like, fuck you.
Yeah, I think in that moment, she sees that he can overthrow the coven. He will transcend them.
That was probably the best scene in the movie.
And it was so simple, just two people in a room for 5 minutes and barely anything happens. He puts his hand in a box.
Those were all the best scenes, in a tent with a mosquito in a room, all those fucking ones.
Isn't that crazy? Those scenes are probably 1% of the budget, and then 99% of the budget is all the crazy shit going on that I didn't care about. So much money going into all those special effects and huge sets and huge things happening that don't move me. But when you have two humans in a room talking, I'm moved.
Yeah, me too. Like the war scenes, and like I could have seen a little bit of it and it would have been cool. But yeah, I mean, save some money and make a movie for us and not just some big set piece movie.
I mean, I guess that's what you got to do, right? Like if you're going to make an IMAX movie, you have to have the spectacle.
True.
But it's a bummer. I don't necessarily want the spectacle, but are you going to reach a general audience without it? I don't know. Like if you take all those moments out, I don't know that other people, I guess I don't know how other people would react.
I could watch the movie again, and you should go into a Dolby IMAX. Like if I tried to watch that movie again on my computer, I don't think I could get through it again. I could go tonight and just sit there, recline in the chairs, be shooking around, watch the giant worms, eat some popcorn, and just chill out and enjoy those like 5 minutes worth of good scenes that we're talking about. I think that was the kind of quick fix for me. When thinking about it now, the only scenes that I'm really remembering are happening indoors and they're very intimate. I don't remember really why or what happened with all the desert shit. I remember it was like fun because I was looking at a giant screen. But I actually remember, him putting his hand in that box with the mother, him and his mom in the tent. Basically all the indoor scenes. When he dies, I remember when that fat fucking guy, the emperor,
Stellan Skarsgård,
that fat piece of shit.
And he's not the emperor, right? He's just the head of the other house, the Harkonnen.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we ever see the emperor.
I got confused. So he's the head of the other house, yeah. And he was, just a greedy fat, kind of like just a fat cat. He just kind of I guess he kind of represented just corruption and greed of, human nature. He was like, I forget the word, but overindulgence. He was even just like fat and eating all the time. Hedonistic. And so I feel like that was a good representation of just whatever you want to call it, corporate greed, disgusting.
Yeah, when you look at those two houses, you could imagine them as two different corporations. The Harkonnen are the corporation that are just greedy, taking advantage. It's all about money and power. And then House Atreides actually doesn't exist in our reality, where the head of that corporation is like, actually, it's the people that matter, not how much money we make. That's a fucking fantasy, and it doesn't exist.
Right.
The other small moment was when Paul was watching his hologram, and that little fly thing, comes through the wall, and he has this.
Yeah.
It's really slow. And it's kind of scary. You don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, what is that thing? It's not like a huge action scene, but that scene works more for me than all of the huge action scenes put together.
Totally.
That was more exciting than the entire war.
I fully agree with that. That was one of the ones I also remember. Even the other characters, speaking of, like Josh Brolin.
What happened to him?
Exactly.
I guess he died.
Did he die?
He just disappeared at a certain point, and I'm kind of thinking, did he blow up? Like, I don't remember what happened.
That's kind of goes with what you're saying with, nothing really, mattered emotionally. Like if that was House Stark, I'd be like, fuck, where did that guy go? There was a giant war. Josh Brolin, the last memory I have is he was running and said, follow me, guys. And then I think he died, but I don't even know. Maybe he comes back, so maybe I don't know what happens, but...
Yeah, maybe he shows up in the next one and we're just not supposed to know what happened, but I was confused during the second half.
And Jason Momoa, similar. He had a cooler character. He was just basically the warrior. and was a badass warrior who helped out the family.
He was the only fun character.
Yeah, he was fun. But even him, when he died, it sucked when he died because he was kind of the only relief of as far as like fun goes. And what about that? Speaking of being confused, the girl, the blue-eyed girl, the friend, what do you call them? Frienders?
The Fremen.
The Fremen lady who was kind of guiding them.
Oh, the one who was sort of like an ambassador or something? Like she kind of worked for the house and the Fremen. She would go between.
Yeah, I'm confused there. I mean, in general, the Fremen seem to be like the natives. They're living on their land. They don't really want to deal with these different houses battling over the spice and corruption. They're just like, leave us alone. And I kind of get that. But then, yeah, she was, I guess, an ambassador. And did she betray them?
I don't know for sure, but I get the sense that she is under orders from the Emperor. And basically, she has to obey the Emperor. And her orders are basically not to do anything. Like, don't interfere. Don't stop. You know, we're going to kill all these people and take the house, whatever. Like, I think she's in on it and she's not allowed to interfere.
What does the Emperor want?
I don't know if it's spelled out. I think Atreides and Harkonnen are both really powerful. And so let's just have them get into a conflict so they can wipe each other out. Like, let's make sure I'm in command.
That makes sense.
But I'm just inferring all this because we never even see the Emperor.
Honestly, that's all that plot-wise that stuck in my head is that, okay, they betrayed them. They were supposed to be cool. And they went to the planet and they got betrayed.
Well, I think what would have really worked for me is if that all happens, but it's kind of in the background, and what matters is Paul's journey. Like, he's reacting to these things, even though he's not a major player, and then by the end of the story, he becomes a major player. He's starting to transition into being a man and stepping up.
Also saying we don't really know what is happening, like you said kind of briefly earlier, with Paul, what his visions are. I get there's a whole prophecy with Paul, and like he obviously has special powers and has like visions of stuff that makes him stronger and more of a player. I don't really know. I mean, maybe I missed it, but I don't know what is happening or like what's true, why his visions. I know the spice is like a hallucinogen to a degree, and that he is half, what is he? He's half like Freeman?
No, because his dad is Oscar Isaac, who is a regular man, but obviously a very powerful man. And his mother, is her name Lady Jessica? By the way, I loved his mother. We haven't even talked about her, but I think she was my favorite character.
Yeah.
She's like the equivalent of a witch. And she's also a part of just an all-female coven of witches that are really high in power. Like they sit next to the Emperor, I'm sure, and they're involved in all the major houses. And they have magic powers. And there's a prophecy that at some point there's going to be a man that is the one. That's going to be Neo. And that's the one that's going to solve the problem, right? And probably overthrow the current system and lead to a better tomorrow, break out of the Matrix. Mm-hmm. And so the reason that other witch is testing him is because his mother was not supposed to have a boy. Because if it is a boy, then either he's the one, or if he's not, they got to kill him because he's going to become too powerful. And I think that's why he has sort of magic powers. And then they just get amplified by the spice.
I was confused in the movie because they say you shouldn't have had a boy. And it was confusing to me because it sounded like she had a choice. And I was like, that's not how birthing works.
She's magic, dude. She could do what she wants.
So now that makes more sense. I knew she had powers and stuff, and I knew they were part of some different, magical peoples, but I missed that, so it didn't really make sense to me.
You know what's really interesting I hadn't thought about before? What do you think about their superpower of the voice, right? What does that mean to you? Like, they can literally say things in a tone that forces people to follow what they're saying.
Yeah, the power of persuasion. I mean, I think of kind of back into sort of energies, like people take advantage of, I could scream at you or say something that really hurts you and jar you, and it rattles you emotionally, and then I have the upper hand, and it goes, I guess they're doing it more in maybe a different way, But that's how I see it, and I see that as negative. It's manipulation, rattling somebody, taking advantage of them.
Well, it's a tool, right? So, like, if you're in the situation like what they were, where they're captured on the ship, like if you were in a life or death situation and you're the victim, and in that moment you use emotional manipulation to outwit your opponent and free yourself, right? So now you're using that tool for good.
Yeah.
It's just that in our reality, we're mostly seeing it used in a really negative way.
Yeah, because I mean, day to day, I don't want to use that tool because then I'm just being the asshole that I don't want to be. But like if it's life or death,
or if you're House Atreides and you actually have good values and you're trying to do good, there's a higher goal, maybe then it becomes appropriate to use your magical power.
That's a whole topic that I struggle with a lot. Like, should you use your enemies' tactics against them? In this case, if it's life or death and you think it'll work, I'm all for it. But then that's like, to me, a whole nother discussion of, are we just fighting fire with fire and becoming like them? They're using shitty, shady tactics, and are we just keep using them back? What makes us different?
Well, think about this. And then later in the film, they're in another life or death situation where the Fremen are going to fucking kill them. But in that situation, they don't use the voice. Why?
I don't know.
I think it's because the Fremen are not evil, right? The Harkonnen are actually evil and they need to be dispatched. The Fremen are just, we're on their fucking planet. We're stealing their spice, right? They're not evil. And they have their own rules, their own culture. And we got these fucking Atreides people coming in and they're using their power to sort of, take advantage of the planet. But when their lives are actually threatened, I don't know if this is a choice or just a plot hole, but I'm just going to interpret it as a choice. They choose not to use their magic to manipulate those people because they don't deserve it.
I love that. That's actually going to help me specifically when I think about this shit. So hopefully it was on purpose, but that makes a lot of sense. Like if someone's evil and you doing something, a negative trick to them is going to help the greater good. Okay. But yeah, if they're not, maybe they're just misled or just not just difference of opinions, then there's no need to use those dirty tricks in that situation.
And the Fremen are not even misled, right? They just live a different way.
Yeah, true.
And we're fucking invading their land.
Wow. Yeah, then I do like that.
I just thought of that now because when it was happening in the movie, I'm thinking, why the fuck aren't they doing the magic trick again? They just did it.
I didn't even think about that. But I like your interpretation, so I'm just going to imagine that that's true. That's why they didn't do it. I wanted to talk about that final fight scene. That was the most stressful. I don't know if I was, I guess, enough emotionally connected in that fight where it was very stressful. Like, he's having visions. You don't know if he's going to die or not. I started to like the kid, and I don't hate these Freemen, and he just wants to, fight him. And it's like, damn. And I'm getting stressed, like thinking if I was in that situation, the kid, I'd be like fucking nervous and shit. And like, I got to fight this guy if I'm going to die. I'd be so scared. And I think it was amplified by the fact that he's kind of not, or if he is, he's hiding it well. And he's, confident enough just to go and fight this guy. So there was, to me, just a physical tension that I felt, and that might be the most I felt in that whole movie. I'm wondering if you felt that tension at all, or if it was just kind of like whatever to you.
It didn't totally work, but I think the idea of it really works, where it's like, I think those are his first steps in becoming a man, like how he handles that situation and takes responsibility and follows the rules that are laid before him and stands his ground. He does all the right things, right? Like he's not just being a follower. He's not just, acting childish. Like this is him stepping in.
Yeah.
I just want to point out really quickly that you called them free men, but it's Fremen, but it sounds like free men. And you even misspoke it. They are the free people, right? They're not, part of this bigger system where they're all slaves to a higher up, right? Following the emperor.
Yeah, they're living the life that many of us, me, I feel like a lot of people kind of envy that we don't have. Like we're not able to anymore. Just at once surviving, not with all the bullshit of the rat race. And I don't even know if those people exist anymore, just off the grid.
Well, they exist in tribes, right? In places that have been untouched by civilization. It feels like once you have been corrupted by civilization. It feels like there's no going back. But Paul Atreides is stepping into it, right? Like the trap feels like once you're under the control of the Emperor and they have a lot of power, you can't step out of that system. But I think this story is like we're experiencing the first steps of him leading them out of that system. It's just like the Matrix, man, where like he is Neo and now he is going to break out of the system for everyone. He's going to lead people out of that system.
I mean, I was thinking Matrix themes the whole movie, or like once he was the prophesied kid, and I definitely drew a ton of similarities to it. And I actually liked him better in a way because in my head, Neo, especially in the first Matrix, he's just going along with it. Like people are telling him all this shit and he's like, whoa, yeah, okay. He doesn't really fight it or make many of his own choices, or, I mean, subtly he does. And I guess in the second couple movies he does. But I almost liked Paul's sort of reaction to it better because there was a healthy amount of frustration. And even in the tent when he blows up on his mom and he's like, what the fuck? You like turned me into a freak. At least he was, questioning stuff and wanting to do his own thing. I mean, he had all the training, he learned all this stuff, but nothing's really happened in his life. He hasn't had that much real experience. And shit starts happening to him immediately, like in the movie, crazy shit. And he handles things so well. He seems like a natural leader with, again, I'll just say the healthy amount of, well, I'm not just going to listen to whatever this bullshit is. Let me at least do some of my own shit, make my own choices.
He's somewhat well-formed, but he's not Neo yet. In the beginning of the movie, he's not capable of leading people outside of the system. In fact, he doesn't really want to get involved, right? He's like, do I got to do this? Like, he's questioning the whole thing.
Yeah.
There's no way you could, in the very beginning, say, okay, are you willing to take responsibility for completely overthrowing the system and like leading people out of this mess? But by the end of the movie, he is.
He's, on the path, I guess.
Help me through this. So in The Matrix and in this film, a major theme is that there is a chosen one, right? There's a prophecy and it's the main character, right? That seems odd to me. Like, what do you make of that? Like, I don't know how to bring that into our reality because that doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
Don't you like the idea of the everyday person who becomes incredible instead of it being handed to them? Like, oh, you're the incredible person that's going to fix everything.
I don't like it either. And it kind of reminds me of the revamp of Star Wars. I forget which one it's called now.
Is it The Last Jedi or is that the third? I forget what it's called too.
But he tries to do something different, the director, and kind of throw away that you have to be kind of chosen or at least have a family name. Like if you're not a Skywalker or whatever, then you're kind of not a player in the story. In the movie, it kind of begins to show like Rey and this other kid who aren't, destined or chosen. They're just regular Joes, and it awakens in them, and then they, become players in the game, or they kind of create their own destiny. They abandon that really quick.
Well, J.J. Abrams came back and fucked it up again.
She has to be either a Sith or a Skywalker or whatever the fuck. But yeah, and that sucks because that was the one I connected to the most because I like that theme of, and I don't know how to relate it to our real world because there isn't really, chosen ones. I guess if you're in a big family, if you're like a Trump or something and you're Trump Jr., your destiny is probably likelier to lead you somewhere powerful and big.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me too, right? To be chosen in our reality is inheriting money and power. And I don't like that.
Because there's no other real version except for in Buddhism when they go out and they find, or the Dalai Lama, and they do choose, or there is somebody that is chosen and they have the spiritual enlightenment or what have you. And it's usually just some random pauper kid and they take him and he's chosen. But other than that, in the real world, it's just, I guess, more about status, which kind of sucks.
Okay, so the way you just said it made me think of this. Like, so what if the chosen one, it's the combination of the person, because Paul Atreides is half and half, right? He's half Oscar Isaac's son, where he's inheriting all this power, but he's also half of this magical realm.
Yeah.
So maybe in this case, the chosen one is the person who does inherit power, but also they have the correct value system. Because if you have the correct value system, but you have no power, maybe there's no path forward. Like you're fucked because you're just going to be another victim of the system. It doesn't matter how good your values are. So the miracle is the person who has the values and the power. And that's Paul Atreides?
Yeah. I mean, it still sucks in the real world that even if you have great values and...
Well, imagine if Elon Musk was a superior human being. Like he had really, really deep, good values. And the end goal was really to help as many people as possible spiritually, not just to create a bunch of wealth. It's to help uplift all of civilization and our human spirit. Maybe that is his goal. I don't know. But like, if it was, in combination with the fact that he's also incredibly wealthy and has a lot of power in this, he's going off into space and he's doing all these things. If he's doing that and he's a good person, then we have a miracle. Like that, oh, that's the chosen one.
Okay, but they're self-made. So say like that with, let's say like Kanye, I think he came from kind of nothing, or somebody like that who isn't born into wealth, but makes like, or Tom Bilyeu, they make their own wealth, they make their own enterprise or company or what have you, and then they also are, have the right ideology and want to help and have all that. So I guess I connect with that one more, that they're self-made. They're not born into it. It's not because they were born, a Trump or whatever.
You're right. I like that more too. But I wonder if that's just too modern of an idea, because this book is like over 60 years old or whatever. I don't know. If you go back enough decades, like there's, of the American dream, blah, blah, but are most people able to climb out of poverty, or is it a really slow process? It takes generations of a family crawling out of poverty.
Yeah, maybe back then, the American dream or crawling out of poverty you weren't going to end up Kanye style. You started really poor from a bad area, and now you're a teacher or a doctor, and that's making it and being very wealthy and rich and successful.
If we go back to the time of kings, there's no such thing as the fucking villager, the poor villager climbing out of poverty and overthrowing the kingdom, right? Like that's not common. Usually the king will remain in power.
God, what we're kind of describing is the American dream. Because I feel like that's what brings, to an extent, that's what brings people here, is they see these self-made millionaire stories, and either that's what they want, or they even just know that if you work really, really hard, you can at least have like a middle class, upper middle class life here. I mean, it's kind of not true to a big degree, or very unlikely, but that kind of that's just what I'm thinking about, is why so many people migrate to USA. I guess it's kind of different now in the 2021, but that was like kind of what sold people, is you can come here and be anything, whatever you want, no limitations.
Yeah, it's too bad the way it sort of turned out, where like there's a lot of potential there with that dream, but then for the vast majority of people,
it poisons them.
It does not uplift their soul, right? You fall into a trap of seeking money and power and doing things that should be going against your values, but I guess you have to give up your values to keep climbing up. I think that's closer to reality.
Yeah, on a grand scale, it's kind of a poisonous, horrible mentality of you work real hard and you get that success is money and power and stuff and not happiness. So they're selling a great dream. And as long as we're all, for the most part, just agreeing that's what success is, you have a business and money and you have political power or whatever it is, that's the poisonous dream that isn't even really a noble thing to go after. Like if you want to, going after being rich or famous is kind of gross. But if you have a goal, a healthy goal, then that seems like the healthy version to me.
Well, I think that's where the Fremen come in, right? So you have Paul Atreides, who's the combination of, he's got the wealth and power, and his mother, he's got the magic, and he's part of this higher realm. But then by the end of the movie, he's also going to become a Fremen.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not power seekers, right? They are the people on the planet who just want to fucking live there, right? Like, I'm just going to exist. We're not climbing a ladder, crawling over each other, right? And so maybe it's only when those three things come together that we have the miracle of the one paying off.
That's similar to the Matrix too. It's kind of, you have to have all three line up, mind, body, spirit.
Oh, yeah.
The most kind of memorable quote or scene in Dune is kind of talking about this. And it's when he's out there in the graveyard or something, Paul's talking to his dad. Like you said, he kind of says, what if I don't want this? And he's talking about the ring and the power, that he's going to have. And then his dad says something along the lines of, that's what I said to my dad. Like, I don't know if I want this shit. And then my dad was like, power is like, you can only have power if it is given to you. You can't just aggressively claim power. And if you don't want that responsibility, or if that's not what you want, it's fine. Like, you're still my son. I'm not expecting you to do this just because you have the name or what have you. I think that kind of goes in line with
It totally does. I forget exactly how they say it, but it's like that classic line of great leaders are called in and they don't want to do it. They're not seeking power.
Yeah.
But they're recognized and given power. And then they take responsibility and claim it. But they're not that type of person who's just seeking it out, because that person is poisonous and it's not going to go well for other people.
Yeah. And I love that theme.
You almost have to reject it to be a good leader. Or you have to be the kind of person that wants to reject that power. You're not seeking it out, but it's thrust upon you.
And in the real world, just the more I grow up, I see that to be just the case. Like, I see people who take power, and it's weird because, you think, well, that's how you become powerful. But I just think it has to happen like that. Like, somebody has to have the ability to trust in someone else and give them the chance to have more responsibility than they have. And the person can't be, again, seeking it. But they can't be so scared of it. It's like a healthy balance where they take on the responsibility and it kind of goes from there.
Dude, it's following someone out of love again.
Yeah.
Right? We're giving power through love. You're being uplifted by the people who are doing so not out of fear, but they're making a choice that they want you to have this power.
Yeah. I always think back to Washington, George, because that's, I guess, the most classic example. He wasn't seeking it. He was just given it. Like, he was just the best warrior and like kind of calm or whatever it was.
God, who's the last president that was not seeking power? Can you think of one in our lifetime? The answer, spoiler alert, is there wasn't one. I would say every single person on the campaign trail, every single person in our lifetime who has been a candidate, they've all been this poisonous type of person.
Maybe since Washington. Maybe he was the only one because he was the first.
Well, that's why we need a fucking Neo. We need a Paul Atreides. We need someone who sort of exists within the American system, but also is a part of it, like, can see through it as a part of a spiritual realm or a different plane, and can break out of the system and lead us somewhere else. Because, like, staying in the system is a trap.
You have to have empathy. Like, when somebody is given power and it's the type of person you want to follow out of love, it usually stresses them out for a while because they understand what it's like to be in other people's shoes. They know they can't please everybody, but they have a substantial amount of empathy. So yeah, I'm just thinking about too, like with my personal experience is kind of how it happened with me. It's just like I started really small in the company I work for, and then it slowly just happened. Like they trusted me to do this, and they say, all right, we'll do this extra, this higher job. And I kept getting a little more responsibility and promotion. And it was always stressful to me. I'm like, whoa, you want me to now tell this person what to do? Like, I was always not like, yes, all right, you do this, you do this. It was always more like thrown into the fire. And then I came out alive because, I kind of had to do it and I wanted to do it, but it was very, stressful.
Maybe you're on the path, dude. Maybe you're a Neo.
But yeah, this isn't about me. This is about Paul.
Something that's happened is we've lost the mythology of religion. There used to be a story we were all telling ourselves that was aiming towards a thing that was higher than humanity. We're not just worshiping men. There's someone even higher than the king, and they're not even a human, right? There's something even higher. The King of Kings. We go higher and higher and higher. And, over the last few decades, we've destroyed that system. And there are obviously people who are still religious, but I just mean the majority. Atheism goes up, belief in the scientific method goes up. Like, we keep going in this other direction, which I was totally on board with when I was younger, right? Because you see obviously things in the past where religion went wrong and it didn't always help. It led to some disaster. And you're like, well, science can't be faulty. There's nothing corrupt about science. You're just believing in reality, right? Mm-hmm. But it's leading us away from a story. It's a study of objective reality, but now we've forgotten what values are, right? Because values aren't objective. You can't measure them in a microscope. What is the proper path of a human? Can you tell me in math? No. Mm-hmm. We can only get there through stories that we tell. And so that religion now has been replaced either by politics, which is a fucking disaster, science, which science is not fulfilling, or, I think the best option we have is basically movies, or big stories that happen in pop culture, Star Wars, these stories that tell us they lay a spiritual landscape with a value system, and it touches people and it works on a lot of people. I don't think this is ideal, but it seems like something that's obviously missing, right? Like, this is why I think Marvel movies do so well. Like, there used to be all these different gods that represented these different values, and people could tell stories about them. And really, you're sort of talking about yourselves, but it's outside of yourself. And now we have Spider-Man and Iron Man and Batman and, and Superman.
Yeah.
And that's what we have, which is, I think, a step down, but it's better than politics, right? Like, Star Wars works for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that think they're Jedi, right? They list that as like, yeah, I'm a Jedi. They fucking believe it, right? That movie has touched them so deep in their heart that, like, it's become sort of like their religion.
I think movies are going to play a big part, but it might be easier to understand for, I guess, the masses if you kind of branch movies into kind of a cultural change or a cultural awakening. The norm now is, I don't know, kind of greed or just gain success, money.
It's very egocentric, right? Like, it's more concerned about yourself instead of a bigger picture.
It's not very spiritual. In general, religion is kind of out of the picture. And like you said, politics seems to have replaced it. I think movies will play a big part. And if you start sort of changing the culture with, what kind of movies are being made or that just resonate with people in conjunction with the type of kind of icons or idols we have, even in like music and just kind of mainstream culture, if their ideology kind of shifts to that more spiritual, like less into the negative egocentric success, you have to win, put other people down, and more into, I guess, almost Eastern, like a calmer state and a more go with the flow kind of universal kind of thing, which is in Dune, I think. That makes more sense to me because movies, you could, it's like you said before, like some people worship Star Wars like it's a religion. And they're not like saying, oh, I love the ideas in this movie. They're like, no, I follow the faith of Star Wars. And that's kind of like, the same thing to me. I don't think a movie should be like one movie to rule them all and to be like, all right, I follow this.
One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, find them.
Yeah, it looks like politics took over. And if, as you're talking, if I kind of simplify it down of how polarized we are, it seems like one side almost represents just pure logic without anything else. and the other side represents kind of pure emotion. Like, I know that's not entirely true, but what's missing from, if you did divide it like that, like, all right, they're too logical, they're too emotional. The thing that's missing is the spirituality, which would be kind of like what you're saying movies could fill the hole of.
The mythos.
Yeah.
And so, I bring this up because Dune is obviously one of these movies, right? There's something going on here. There's some value system that's being expressed to us.
Yeah.
I don't know that it works because it's not hitting emotionally, right? Or at least for me, because I wasn't moved while it was happening, I'm not taking the values into the back of my mind while they will sit there for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I will probably forget most of them in the coming years. And that sucks because I think there are really interesting values here that we could all benefit from. And with a slightly different script or a slightly different direction, it could change things.
I dove deeper just thinking about it because I knew we were going to talk about it. But if I had just seen the movie and, we weren't going to do a podcast on it and talk about the themes of it, I might have gotten a little, thought for a second, but they didn't hit on the level where I was just blown away and tuck them away into my subconscious and save them for later or whatever. I'm only getting there because I'm thinking about it, And I'm just using, since we're doing a podcast about it, I'm using the themes as an analogy for stuff that I think is fun to think about.
I think this movie has the deeper level, but then the surface level is not working for me. Obviously, it's working for people because I think it has a fairly good rating on Rotten Tomatoes and it's making money. So I think there are a lot of people who like this.
Yeah, maybe the people aren't getting the deeper meanings. It's just like they were sitting in my, like me, a Dolby Digital seat, shaking around.
Well, it doesn't matter if they get the deeper level consciously. The way it could work is the superficial level pierces your heart and implants something that you don't fully understand. That's the spiritual part, right?
Right.
It's not logic. It's not like something, it's not giving you an equation that you're going to remember, oh, this is the way I need to act. But it's going to give you a feeling about it, right? Not a rule, but a feeling. And that's where it could have been really powerful. But I don't know. I don't know what other people... Henry, will you tell us?
Honestly, I didn't like it, man. It didn't touch me at all.
Do you have a reason why? Like, I struggle to explain why I didn't fall in love with it.
For a few reasons. For me, I was watching it during the day. So at times I found it to be really, really dark where I couldn't see the details.
The big fucking worm shows up. Like, this is the thing I'm waiting for. And the movie's so dark, you can barely see the worm.
Oh my God. Stupid. I just can't wrap my head around who thought that was a good idea.
I'm pretty sure that shot is in the trailer and they brightened it up so you could fucking see it. But then when it happens in the movie, you can't even see it.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say like just the color. Number two, I would say the storyline. I kind of got it. I would say it was probably one of the most hyped movies of this year with the highest disappointment.
Yeah, I got to say, I was kind of hyped because it's like sort of a serious science fiction movie. And I'm just so on board for that. But yeah, I was also very disappointed.
It sounds like what you were saying. It's the surface level didn't work. People weren't following the story and they weren't, falling into one of the characters. So it just became the grandiose spectacle, which I guess is still enjoyable. I mean, I even enjoy it for that. But the rest is maybe just didn't hit.
Yeah. Like, what do you guys believe the meaning was? I mean, like I was hearing you guys talk. The mom has like magic, I guess you can call it. And then the father, just has power essentially.
We're sort of carrying this over from themes that we talked about in the Matrix sequels, where like the Matrix sequels seem to be pointing at this balance between the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I think here there is a balance between the spiritual realm of the mother, the power realm of the father, but then the Fremen is that third element that's sort of just freedom, where you're not seeking power. It's just like, what do you call it? More Zen or something.
The flow.
Yeah, being in the flow. That's what they, I think, represent. Oh, that's totally what they represent. They fucking ride the worms around.
Yeah.
They're in the flow.
Well, in that scene where they're getting chased, Paul and his mom, and they're in that bug-looking spaceship, and they go into the dust storm, the sandstorm, and they're ripping apart, and they're probably going to die, where he turns everything off, and that's when he decides to just go with the flow. You know, he's not going to fight anything. He's just going to let it go, you know, not stand against the stream and try and fight it, but just to surrender and kind of ride it.
I think you're totally right. I think that is the moment where he's beginning to transcend.
Yeah.
Like he's hearing, I think, a voice almost from another realm, right? Like he's in touch with something else that's telling him to let go, and he actually does. And I think that's the beginning of his journey.
Yeah, you're right.
Nobody told him to do that. I'd be freaked. His mom didn't say anything, and he just let go. Yeah, it's a big boy decision right there.
So do you have an idea of like where the mom, like that power, what is that supposed to represent?
They're not just existing in physical reality, but they are aware of a higher existence. But there's also something going on with the way they have formed a system around this power, which I think is problematic, right? So like that coven on its own is bad. And I think the power of the father on its own is bad. But it's these things kind of balancing each other out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've not read the book, so I'm just pulling shit out of my ass here.
I actually believe that power should have came from the sand people. I believe that once he would have like fallen into just a deeper level, I believe that is when the power should have came. I'm thinking that maybe the storyline will lead towards the mom belonged to those people, but were separated at some point in the past.
I like that better too.
Dude, when you say it, now I've reinterpreted my thought. The Coven of Witches is in touch with that power systematically, right? They've erected a system, a way to operate, to be in touch with the spirit realm. The Fremen have not done that. They are in a free flow state. And in that state, they are also in touch with that spirit realm, but they're not doing it through a system.
So the witches have harnessed it, so to speak, but the Fremen, it's just something that they can feel, but they're not going to try and like capitalize on it.
The witches have harnessed it, but they've lost their freedom.
That sucks. In a lot of movies, it's like, it's hard for me to dive in because so many movies now give people powers. You know, X-Men, you have mutant powers, or all the superheroes, or The Matrix, or anything. But for me, like the way to insert myself into it, you know, even though I can't move things with my mind, is that those powers in general usually represent a in-touchness with the spirit realm. Like obviously I can't move things with my head, but the power is maybe you tap into your more sensitive, like spiritual side, and you kind of get into like energies and just feeling people's flows and letting go of control and just kind of going with it and tapping into that, into being present and to feeling people's negative or positive energies. And then I can kind of say, oh, I understand what that represents to me. I can't like slip through walls or what have you, but I can get more in touch with my spiritual energy.
Yeah, when they operate like good metaphors, I think that's what's happening. I think some of the stuff that's happening in the Marvel universe is nonsense, where they're not actually good metaphors.
Those are just like, it's badass. I mean, like there's so many movies, there's no longer a metaphor and analogy. It's just like, oh, it's cool as fuck when he spits fire, or, you know, there's literally nothing else to it.
But like you were saying, like maybe you can't move things with your mind, but that's a good metaphor for your mind having a lot of power that can manifest in the real world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we'll just show it in another way.
Yeah, exactly. And also, one of you guys needs to change the battery in your smoke detector.
Oh yeah, dude, that's me. That's me.
Are you in danger, Henry? Are you in trouble?
No, man, it's just the smoke alarm.
Well, should we forge ahead and try and wrap up the podcast?
Henry, answer honestly. Do you consider yourself to be a smart person or a dumb person?
Jesus Christ. That's such a complex question for me. I would say that I know a lot. Well, I know a little bit about a lot. I know a lot of stuff, but I don't know everything. I do have a passion for learning, though. So I will say that I'm stupid with an interest of being smart.
That's exactly where we are. Yeah, I'm struggling to get better. I'm always working to get better. I feel like I can do better, and that's kind of the journey I'm on.
I'm just dumb.
No,
I'm stupid.
You have room for growth, right? That's the whole point. Otherwise, what's the point in living?
I don't retain any knowledge. I can't remember things. I'm slow to process, slow to respond. I don't know what's happening around me. So I feel I'm just going to check the dumb box and move on.
We have to do a whole episode about it because I'm struggling with exactly that. And there's so many things I have to do all day. There's so much I need to do for work, and then trying to prep for the future and trying to educate myself about things to make things easier on me. And it's too much work and I can't handle it. And I feel like I need to restructure my life so I can function as a dumb person and still get things done.
Yeah, totally.
That's how we all should feel. If we believe that we have it made, or we have it all figured out, then you're far from that.
Well, it's a catch-22 question, right? Because the answer to that question is smart people admit that they don't know very much.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm smart, but that's in general what people will say is, if you think you're smart, you're not. But if you're smart, you kind of admit that you don't know anything. So it's an ironic catch-22. But I'm not even saying that I know anything.
I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, or there's that curve where a really stupid person learns a little about something and then they think they're a fucking genius because they don't yet know all the things that they don't know. And then if you're farther on that journey and you start to learn even more, you go, oh shit, this is way more complicated than I thought, and I don't know enough yet. You got a good sign off?
Yeah, thanks for listening to the Brothers Dim. Take the battery out of the smoke alarm, unplug the wires out of the wall, and then you put it away and just hope a fire doesn't happen.
You know what? I'm going to burn this house down. That's never going to happen again.
The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness.